Good morning. Today I thought I'm making hot process soap for a private label client, and I thought it was as good a time as any to have a talk through the pros and cons of hot and cold process soap making. So I teach both in my classes, but most people do cold process soap making. So very quickly, what is the difference between them? So cold process is where we make our soap up, we blend all our ingredients together, we put it in the mould, and we just leave it to go through that chemical saponification process on its own. Hot process is where we very much do the same initially. Keep stripping my head off. We mix it all together, but we do this generally in our crock pots or slow cookers, and then we cook the soap batter, which forces it through that chemical reaction in about 20-30 minutes, depending on the recipe that you're using. So pros and cons. Pros of cold process soap making. So it is generally, it doesn't take too long to make a batch up. You can make it in less than an hour, 40 minutes. If you pre-prepared your lye, 20 minutes, doesn't take long at all. Got to check my list so I don't forget. Minimal equipment is needed. So for cold process, you just need plastic jugs. You do need a hand blender, obviously. You do need your safety equipment, so your gloves and goggles, spatula, weighing scales, digital thermometer. That is pretty much it. For hot process, you need a slow cooker as well. So that is really the main difference. But to be honest, they're not expensive. You can get them in a second-hand shop really cheaply. Cold process, the option to make multicoloured soaps is really easy. So you can do stripy soaps or pattern soaps very easily once you've nailed the process, obviously. With cold process, you would not be able to achieve anything like these with a hot process. You can swirl hot process soap, but it's tricky. It's harder to keep your batter nice and thin, and it depends on your recipe as well. So from a creative perspective, cold process soap making is much more creative and artistic. Just as a point of interest, this is one of my hot process dog soaps. So you can see that they are quite rustic, they're quite rough around the edges, they're all one colour, but they have their place. So, final one, the finished soap is nice and smooth, it's attractive to look at, there's no going away from that really, whereas the hot process soap can look quite rustic and rough around the edges. The cons. Cold process, you have a 4 to 6 week cure time, so you need to leave it for at least 4 to 6 weeks. There is ways of tweaking that. You can reduce your water, which will save you a bit of time on the curing, but then that brings other problems with it. The clearing up, the washing up. No one likes the washing up, and washing up for cold process is horrible. You've got greasy, caustic batter in your dishes. You have to wipe all that out before you can even begin to think about washing them. Fragrance perspective, not all fragrances do that well in cold process soap. Not only do they have to go through that chemical saponification process, they then have to last for the cure time as well. So with hot process, you add your fragrance after it's cooked. So you've kind of taken out one step. You've taken out the need for your fragrance to survive saponification. So sometimes you'll find a fragrance that might not work that well in cold process soap will work better in hot process. Problems. There's more to go wrong, I think, with cold process soap making. There's little things like soda ash, which is where your sodium hydroxide reacts with the air before it's had time to turn into soap. That looks a bit like a white ash on the top of your soap. You don't get that with hot process soap. You can have it getting too hot in the mould and cracking, which doesn't look too attractive on top. If some fragrance oils and essential oils can accelerate trace, which means that when you put them in with your soap batter, it can cause it to thicken up really, really quickly so that it's almost impossible to get it in the mould. Again, you don't have any of this with hot process soap making because you just put it in at the end and away you go. So less to go wrong with hot process. You need to plan a bit further ahead. If you are a professional maker, you're selling, you really do need to plan sort of 5-6 weeks ahead for Christmas, Mother's Day, that kind of thing, because you need to allow for your cure time. So there's a few difficulties with cold process soap making that you don't necessarily have, or to the same degree with hot. Hot process, the good bits, the pros. I'll probably get shot down in flames for this, but I feel that you can use it a bit sooner than you can with cold process. Most of what's happening during the curing process is water evaporation. And with hot process, your soap is more of a batter, a thicker batter with less water in by the time it even goes in the mould. So not only do you save some time on the curing, the first 2 days saponification, you then save time on water evaporation. So you can use it a little bit sooner, but it does benefit from a cure. Cleaning up is so easy with hot process. So, I've got 4 slow cookers on the go here, but all I will do with them is get my soap out, pop it in the mould, and then all you've got left is soap. So I scrape it out as much as I can, and then I just put hot water in it, leave it for 20 minutes, empty it out, give it a wipe around, and I'm done. It's so much easier. Essential oils remain truer in scent because, and I've covered it briefly already, you're not adding them in for them to survive that chemical reaction. That's already happened, you're adding them in afterwards. So I think that it's preferable in that respect. A bit less planning needed for special events or occasions because you can maybe get away with shaving a couple of weeks off your preparation time. So in that respect, it could be useful. And that sort of ties into maybe needing a little bit less space because you don't have to make quite so far ahead. My favourite one, you can choose your superfat. Now, I'm not going to cover what superfatting is here, not the time or place. I have got a blog about it. But with hot process soap making, you can put your recipe in a soap calculator with a 0% superfat, make it, cook it, wait for it to turn into soap, and then your chosen superfat can be a really lovely, luxurious oil, like rosehip or avocado or something like that. And then you can put it in after the cook, and because all the sodium hydroxide has been used up, you know that that luxury oil will be your superfat. So, or it could be a butter, shea butter, something like that. So in that respect, it's brilliant. Choosing your superfat, you can't do that in cold process, no matter what anyone tells you. It just all gets mixed in during the 24, 48 hours saponification process. So that is a plus. The negative or cons of hot process soap making is it's not as pretty. You can do swirls, but they don't look very good. It's just more rustic looking, but if you like a rustic look, perfect. So colours, you can colour it. I mean, I'm making some here which I'm colouring with clay, but it's all the same colour. So in that respect, it's easy. You can just put your colours, clays, micas, or whatever in at the beginning if you're happy for it all to be the same colour. But swirls, you'd have to start separating it out. And as soon as you start taking your batter out, separating it, and it starts to cool, it starts to thicken up and set. You don't get much time to work with it at all. You can't make such large batches with hot process soap making. This is why although I'm making hot process here, it's for one of my clients, for my dog soaps, I've switched across to cold so I can make larger batches. With hot process, you are limited by the number of slow cookers you've got. There are other ways of doing it, using large saucepans, etc. I'm not going to go into that here. I have done it. It's pluses and minuses. Yes, you can make a larger batch, but you have to move really quickly and make sure it doesn't get overheated, and you do end up with a lot of volcanoes. The next one, harder to use additives such as milk or fresh vegetable juices, as they will have a tendency to scorch in your soap. So maybe not quite as versatile with the soaps that you can make. And that's it for negatives. I really can't think of anything more. So in the classes, I do this hot process in the morning because you can't overblend it. It doesn't matter if you take it to a really thick trace. It's all in the pot anyway. So it's a good opportunity to practice that first stage and see what the different stages of trace look like. And then in the afternoon, we go on to cold process and everyone's got a bit more of an idea. So it's really forgiving. There's not much that can go wrong. You do need to have your temperatures right to avoid volcanoes. So for that, I always say to everybody, have your oils less than 150 Fahrenheit. Have your lye solution at room temperature, and then you won't have volcanoes, and it always works every time. Preference-wise, for me, I probably would lean towards cold process, but only because I like to play around with colours. I can make larger batches, and to some degree I can I don't have to necessarily be here for the same day. Because my coconut oil soaps are so hard, I have to cut them while they're still warm with hot process. To be fair, I do that with cold process as well, but I probably would get away with leaving it to the next day if I wanted. So anyway, that is a very quick overview of hot versus cold. Any questions, pop them in the comments below and I will come right back to you.